So welcome, Lorna. Welcome to the Red Talks here at the West Lothian Recovery Service. It's great to finally get you. I know we've been talking for a wee while now about doing it. I want you to wait till your book launch, and we're going to talk about that. So I'm excited about that. But I'm just going to introduce you a wee bit to the people who watch this, and then we'll get right into it. So I didn't do a big fanfare because people tell their own stories. But I just wanted to say that I've read your story. I've heard about you before, and you're a partner, a good friend of mine as well. So you've been on my radar, I suppose, and certainly on the radar to get you on here. So it's great, and I now know that you're running the holistic hub up what is it? Sorry,
Holistic Health Hub.
Kim, what I've wrote, holistic hub. My head's not right. It's been a long day, but I'm glad to have you on, pal. So I'm really excited about that. So how's your day been?
It's been pretty good, yeah. I've been meeting with old friends just now that they can visit, so they've been popping in.
I think we're in West Lothian at the moment. We're on the watch list.
Oh.
So we were going to start up a recovery program next week with people live in the building, but we've had to put it back because of that. Now we need to clean the building every day. We have professional cleaners in every day, so we need to organise that as well. So it's challenging, but it's great that you're getting to meet your friends and stuff.
Well, it's because they read the book. They wanted to come and see me, and they wanted to get the book signed and things. So I was like, oh, okay then.
Okay, so why don't we start with that? This is the latest book I've read, guys. I read it at the weekend. It's Lorna's book, Living in 3D, Drink, Drugs and Denial. And it's a fascinating story. I hope you didn't mind me saying, but I was gripped by it. So much recognition from my own life, or elements of it. But what an amazing journey. Could you describe a wee bit about it to other people? How would you say it? You know, what's your elevator pitch? Come on.
Oh, sorry. What, do you want me to read the back of it?
What? I go for it.
No. So it's just my story, and I'm amazed actually at that feedback like you've just given me there, because, you know, I sort of played it down a little bit, I guess. And the friend that you mentioned, your friend, my partner, kept saying, oh no, you could help people with this story of yours. You need to write this book, even if it's just helping one person. You need to do it. You need to tell your story. So I basically, what now, about 18 years ago now it was, where I came to what you call the rock bottom, and I just didn't know who I was or where I was, or, you know, how life was going to be. And I had these thoughts running through my mind that probably the world would be a better place if I wasn't in it. Yeah. And I really, really believed that at that time. And although I'd had these thoughts before, because I'd been in, you know, a dysfunctional marriage before that. I had been married with 3 kids, and I left that marriage. I think, you know, I didn't know there was a whole process to go through when you leave these things. I mean, I can see now that I probably got into these relationships because I needed to do a lot of healing through the primary relationships I had been brought up with. But it had been an idyllic, perfect upbringing for me. I didn't know that you could be affected as children by dysfunction in a family, especially if you're, you know, because you're wrapped up in your denial blanket, you're quite cozy there, and everything's okay, really. I mean, there's no blame there to be put on anybody. It's just the way you think that's just the way it was, and you get on with it, and the generational thought processes that go around at that time, and then you grow and you get whatever you do, and you get married. I got married too young for wrong reasons and all that sort of stuff, and then a serious car accident then rendered me physically broken, and I came out of the marriage, went into another relationship, and it was even more dysfunctional. And my own drinking started getting heavier then as well, you know, because I thought you work hard and you can party all weekend. That was my program right today. no problem with that. I mean, even when I lived in Germany, I was called a weekend alcoholic. I was like, yeah, quite proud of that title, actually. You know. And so I was just a party animal, but then this car accident happened, and I couldn't take the medication from the hospital. It made me violently sick. Dehydrocodeine, anything with codeine in it. And because I was physically broken, trying to get to a toilet to be sick was just proving to be very difficult. And the people that were looking after me were dysfunctional as well. So, you know, really looking back in hindsight, I probably should have had home care in at the time, because I couldn't even get clothes on in the morning. And I needed a wheelchair for a wee while to get around, and then I was on crutches and stuff. So, but once I was on the crutches, I was totally obsessed with somebody else's drinking, and totally, you know, and running around the pubs here in the Highlands and Inverness going, where is he? You know, it became just became complete and utter madness.
That was your partner that was drinking, yeah?
The partner at the time, yeah. Absolutely crazy. And his obsession was the alcohol, and mine was him, and trying to fix it all, you know. So I came to the point of, you can't beat them, join them. And there was just so much chaos going on in the home, and I had these 3 daughters growing up in it, and they were being affected, and I didn't know that, and I was telling everybody to mind their own bloody business, and I was getting threatened by the family to have social care coming in, which probably they should have at the time, but I was just like, sling it and it's none of your business. I'll sort it, I'll fix it. I didn't even know my life was unmanageable, John.
Yeah.
So I came to that crisis point where there was so much going on that I knew it wasn't healthy. I mean, the friends I did have disappeared. They sort of went away because, you know, when you're mupping and moaning to your friends, are going, oh, just get shot of him. And I'm like, oh. And it's like, but I love him. When he's not drinking, he's lovely. And we can have this happy family that I was trying to create. You know, that's just what I was trying to create, and through all the wrong avenues. It was this hole in my soul that was very big, and you know, our souls look to be soothed in any way possible. So that's why it was, can't beat them, join them. I'll just, seems to be working for him, I might as well try it too. So then I started smoking cannabis in my 30s because it was just numbing me out. I'm like, oh yeah, great. Taking Valium and then speed bombs and stuff. And well, luckily I only did that sort of stuff once, because I could not, my body was just rejected all that. It was rejecting alcohol as well, really. And I couldn't understand that. And then, so eventually some little earth angel came along and pointed me in the direction of the Al-Anon family group.
Okay, that's interesting. So was it somebody that had been in your life before, or was it somebody that you just met, or how did you?
It was actually a friend of my partner's who was in AA.
Okay.
He was actually in AA, and he's like, but I was very confused at the time because I had gone to alcohol counselling myself, and they had flipped over Al-Anon, but I'd never heard of it. I knew of AA, but I didn't really know anything about it. But I didn't know what Al-Anon family groups were.
Could you describe a wee bit about what Al-Anon is? Because I know quite a few of our viewers will not know. I will, but some.
Yeah, I tried to try and explain that in the book as well, because there was a lot of controversy around that, because I thought Al-Anon meant Alcoholics Anonymous in a short version, but I didn't know there was another group that I could go to, a support group for friends and relatives of maybe of people that were in AA or were still drinking or whatever. So Al-Anon is, like, they call it the sister fellowship of AA, and it came about through Bill Wilson was the founder of AA, and Bill Wilson's wife Lois, she was the founder of the Al-Anon family groups, which started up about 15 years after AA. So so then I thought it was like like an AA for the wifeys. A few people thought that's what it was about, and I hadn't really a clue what it was about. I was just like, I know something needs to change. So, you know, I was given a phone number, and I phoned up, and I realised it was just on my doorstep. You know, it was very close by. And
was that in Inverness?
Yeah, in Inverness, and I took myself along there. That was the start of it, but I had committed to go into 6 meetings to see if it was for me. And now you remember I've got an obsession about somebody else, so I didn't know anything about me at that time. I didn't think I contributed to this mess at all. It was all his fault. Or it was all their fault, or it was somebody else's fault. So I was addicted to blame as well. Addicted to a lot of things, like, which were very negative. And my work had ceased up because my body was broken, so I couldn't work or do anything. And I was constantly striving to do other things because this was going chaotic, you know, my mental state. And so I would jump into home-based courses. So I did a business admin course. I did another city and guilds and something else, and trying to keep myself busy all the time. I would never sit long enough, even though I was stuck having to go in a wheelchair. I would never sit with myself and go in to just sit with myself and look at myself. So this Al-Anon family groups had me doing that, going and having to look at my part in this relationship, my part in my own life, my participation in life. And it wasn't very pleasant.
In what ways was it not very pleasant?
It was like, oh my God, my poor kids. In fact, I went the opposite way. I went into a bigger poor me then.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. It was, my friend used to say to me, are you in that pity potty again, Lorna? Do you want to shit and get off it, or do you want to stay in it? And I was lucky she was a friend that I would just laugh and go, yeah, I want to get off it. But anyway, it was, yeah, I went into a bigger place of guilt and shame then, because I was seeing then my own reactions to people in life and how I contributed to a lot of the violence that had been going on, you know, and realizing that sort of my marriage, I had a big part to play in the part there of my own behaviors and my own patterns. And wow, I was like, oh, this is crazy. And it was like, I was shown these things and I couldn't understand. So how am I being shown these things? You just sit down and you get a vision or something would go on, you know, and you're like, wow, that's quite scary. That's quite scary, you know. And then I was recognizing these 12 steps and stuff, and I was like, I mean, I hated them. Don't get me wrong. In the beginning, I was like, oh.
So this is the recovery program within Al-Anon.
Within Al-Anon, yeah.
Welcome.
My first time there, I mean, I just basically cried, but I didn't know how the body holds on to things. I didn't know anything about energy. I didn't know anything about these sorts of things. I just sat there and cried, going, oh my God, he's an alcoholic. You know, it wasn't about me, it was about him. What was he doing? So is somebody going to give me a list of things to do to sort this guy out, please? It wasn't about that at all. So the whole point of it was that there was God was being mentioned, and I was like, no, I don't want to go down that route at all. So then I heard something being said, which went with my thought processes, like, oh, my first meeting, this is what I thought, and I went, oh, that's me. I think like that. So then I you know, my interest was piqued then, and like, oh, I should speak to that woman perhaps, or, you know. And I very quickly got a very quick intellectual view of what was going on and how this thing worked and what it was all about. And then eventually I developed an addiction to this program as well. This 12-step program, because for me it was saving my life, and my my home life was changing as I was changing. And my kids were recognizing that whenever this mother of ours goes to these meetings, things are actually a lot better in the home. Nothing to do with the person that was drinking, to do with how I was behaving. So they would, you know, I would flare up or whatever, and they'd say, "Oh, I think you need one of that meetings, mother." And so I, you know, the 6 weeks turned into a year, and then I started going to conventions, and I started coming down your way a lot because I was loving these conventions, and I was getting so much from it, and you know, meeting so many new people, and oh, I just loved it. I was right in the thick of it the whole time, and somebody was talking about service, and I didn't know what that meant, and I was like, "Oh, what's that mean?" And, you know, in Chinese astrology, I'm a rabbit, and I go down a lot of rabbit holes to investigate, see what's going on down there, and I'm usually like, "Oi, you need to come down and see what's going on down here. This is great crap."
So you kind of paint a picture, and you do it in the book as well. And I hope before we finish up today, you read the bit for your daughter that when she wrote to you. It was a beautiful wee piece, and so if you wouldn't mind, we'll maybe go to that at the end. Yeah. But I'm really fascinated because when you started talking about going along to Al-Anon and stuff, and you came across the God word, your face actually screwed up a wee bit, and you were like, and that was exactly my feeling, and it's been that of so many people. And yet, most of us who had that resistance found a way to accommodate it. How did you come to some kind of accommodation with that?
Right. So we talked about the steps, and the second step said, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. So I had said to somebody, "Does that mean I'm insane then?" And she had said to me, "Well, you know, what's your behavior?" I've been like, I went, "Oh, right, okay, got that." But I quite like this idea of a higher power. That, I mean, at the end of the day, God was just a word, but it was everything that meant through being churched and in a religious upbringing and the dogma and all that went with it. And but I didn't know that at that time. I just was like, "Oh, you don't want to mention God to me." And so that the higher power I could work with. Yeah, I thought, I like that. You know, so that's what I started focusing on rather than a God per se. And like, so when I said things were shown to me, the first time I recognized my own behavior, I thought, "Oh, that must be a power greater than me to show me that, because I wouldn't have recognized that myself on my own." So from that, I started to watch and maybe quieten down a little bit and take time out. And because I recognized what all these steps were saying to me without really knowing about them, I started picking up on meditation and stuff. And then, I mean, I did mention in the book, I had a step 3, I had this epiphany. You could call it an epiphany, but for me at the time, it was an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, and that's a powerful, you relate that quite powerfully in the book as well. And I know so many people, myself included, who have experienced things like that. And we all call it's fascinating, we all call it something different, which is brilliant, which is what, you know, there's no dogma around it. There's no saying you have to believe in this or you have to do that, or you have, it's like, wow, and start to find your own way. And that's what I found through your story, and that's what I'm hearing just now as well. So that period of time where you were going to conventions, where you were doing all that kind of stuff, sounds like it was almost like a total immersion in that kind of recovery life, if you would like.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a little book that they gave us, you know, that they had at the first sort of meeting, which I bought right away. Well, I bought 2 books actually. One was called From Survival to Recovery, and I identified with so much, and I could not understand it because it was like, I wasn't brought up in an alcoholic home. So why am I identifying with all these stories from other people, from wherever? And then there was the little, they had the ODAT book, which was One Day at a Time book. I hated it because it had so many references from the Bible. Oh, God, yeah. And I was like, no, I don't want that book. You can take that book away. But they had another one called Courage to Change, and I loved it. And it was just a daily read of somebody's experience.
Is that Melody Beattie, is it?
No, it was a conference group.
Literature one,
And but eventually it led me on to these other books, I have to say, like Melody Beattie and Codependent More, all that stuff. And like Women Who Love Too Much, and all these spiritual type books, which were written a lot of by people that had been in a 12-step program as well. So, you know, I immersed myself after I had that moment, sitting on my sofa, lasted a few days actually, but I immersed myself then, and the TV went off for 2 years. And I immersed myself then in all these other books, anything I could find, because I wanted to know what had happened. You know, because it was like, wow, what just happened there? And you can't, even though I wrote about it, John, I found it difficult to talk about in words. You find it really difficult to talk about in words. And although I had read other people's maybe stories of similarities to that experience, I never met anybody actually until this year who I really connected with, and she had a very similar. It was the most spot on person that I met that had that same. I went, yes, that's what it was. Yeah.
Did you ever watch the video of Sadhguru talking about his experience? What changed him from a business person to what he is now, which is almost a kind of mystic. But he's my favourite Indian mystic.
I like him.
He plays golf. He's got a brilliant sense of humour. He loves riding motorbikes, and he flies. But I mean, he's got something like 11 million people volunteering, reforesting parts of India, and education and yoga for so many people. It's fascinating. But he talks about that experience that he had sitting on a seat up in, I think it was Changi Park or something like that. An amazing story. And I've heard so many of these, and I've met so many people now in recovery and another place who've experienced exactly the same thing through different means.
Yes.
But it was fascinating to hear. So you've been through that. Did you relapse at any point? Because that's the thing that a lot of people really get hooked up on, that they relapse, or they relapse a couple of times or whatever, and then they think, you know, what?
You know, because I wanted to find out about this alcoholism, I'm thinking, well, you know, I had to look back into my family of origin as well. And I realized that there had been periods when I was a kid, maybe that there had been arguments in the home around my dad's drinking. And I recognized that I learned how to deal with a drunk man from my mother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I talked to Mum about that, and she was like, "Oh, you're blaming me?" I'm like, "No, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that's what I had learned."
Talk with my ma, exactly the same talk. Ma, I'm not blaming you. You did the best with what you had.
Absolutely.
What we've all done.
Yeah.
But you were brought up in a very dysfunctional family yourself. Dad alcoholic, blinded in the First World War, blah blah blah. You know, I live in a family.
Well, but my experience of alcohol had been good crack and Kayleys and good fun. I'd never seen violence with it. My mother hit my father once, not just once, and there had been other sort of stuff going on the wagon, and I'd be like, "Oh God, woman, what's your problem? He's just drunk," you know. So, because I was never scared of Dad.
Yeah.
But he was a big man too, but I was never scared of him. More scared of Mum. Her reactions to it, you know. So I learned how to deal with drunk men that way, and I thought, you just slap them, you know, just slap them and they'll be fine. Of course, in my second relationship, that was not the thing to do. So I had to see myself and how I created the violence in my own home, and so I brought my children up. I brought my children up in a violent alcoholic home after I left their father. So to look at that as a mother was just, you know, and I would, oh my God, what have I done to my kids, and blah, blah, blah. And so we've had this whole healing process. I think I'm going to clean off the question that you probably asked me there.
No, because it's straight into that. Is that, I mean, you describe it as well, and I've heard quite a few people do it, and it's talked a lot relationship organisations, but the difference between guilt and shame.
Oh yeah, you asked me if I'd had a relapse. That's what it was. So I discovered that I didn't actually have an issue with alcohol or drugs. I could put them down, no problem. Yeah, so I wasn't the label alcoholic because I was so wound up in another person. I didn't know which fellowship I actually needed to be in, because I was like, my God, I'm identifying with both sides here. You know, I identified with both sides. I was like, gee, yes, I could be an alcoholic. So of course I read the AA big book and studied that, and I was like, oh yes, I'm everywhere here. Which one am I? Am I 1 to 4? You know, so I was trying to figure out where I came in the big picture of humanity, really. Just trying to find out a little bit about myself, and then to make life better, because I knew life was getting so much better. But when I'd hit these emotional curbs, I could get quite melancholy and go, wow, this is, how, you know. But so, like, when I went through these 12 steps, I mean, when you say relapse, I think I did, because I stayed codependent. And I didn't even know about CODA at the time, Codependence Anonymous. Yet I heard about it down south, and I was like, oh, I need to start one of those meetings up here, you know. That's what I am. I'm codependent. But actually, do you know what? I was still codependent of my mommy. You know, I was just like, I still phoned my mother up, and poor old mom, you know, she would take that on board. And so, but I kept moving from person to person as I was shifting and growing, as we say. So I started with a sponsor up here, somebody that would listen to me and sort of guide me, whatever. And then I hit what was called the black belts and the central belt. I went to a convention in Birmingham, and they were like, oh, you're up there with the black belts. Oh, you're right, okay. So I found the Glaswegians, they would just tell you straight. And part of that I loved, and part of that I hated, you know, depending on who it was giving it straight. But actually, that's what I needed. That's really what I needed.
What and about my ma? It was that kind of person that didn't miss you and hit the wall. When she was telling you something, she didn't miss you and hit the wall. And that, I found that with quite a few Glaswegians as well in the recovery circles, right?
Aye, so that's what I really needed, and that, I think that's what sort of boosted me up, because I was getting very frustrated at one point, thinking, because I was still relapsing, if you like, although the relationship had shifted and he wasn't living here anymore, it was still ongoing mentally and emotionally. Not physically, but mentally and emotionally it was. And I mean, we talked about the higher power there, and once or twice I heard this other voice coming in, and I knew it wasn't coming from me, it was something else. And I was like, well, where did that come from? So then it was like, oh, I'd already started this inner journey, but I was really playing with it. I had the 12 steps for me were my pillars, they were my building blocks, or they were like the building blocks, the foundation, if you like, to get back on my feet to a certain extent. And then all the other stuff started coming in as well. After that experience on the sofa, it was like, whoa, I wanted to know all about Reiki. I wanted to know about energy. I wanted to know about how we function as human beings. And, you know, yoga, John, I could never get into the yoga. I kept trying. And I was like, oh, it kept calling me, and I kept pushing it, and like you say, resisting it. I was like, oh, no, do not stop. And then eventually I got into shamanic work, which really took me inside.
Yeah.
It really took me inside, and so it's like, by then I was like, I didn't feel I needed to be in the 12-step program anymore. You know, I kept going back because I've got this personality that I never know when enough is enough. That's what it is, right? So, but there's actually in the DSM, which is the book for mental illnesses, there's actually a label for that. If you know, I can't, don't ask me to pronounce it, but it begins with a D. And when I discovered that, I'm like, oh my God. And it's so funny because, you know, then because I was looking a lot at mental illness and mental well-being and trying to you know, master this mind of mine, and realizing that I was addicted to my thoughts and stuff like that. And, you know, meditation then shifted to contemplation. So it was a bit different to the meditation. And, you know, I was looking at all these different brain waves that we have, theta and delta and all that. And I was like, oh, so like I say, I'm the rabbit. I go down the rabbit hole and I look at all these systems and see how they work. And I actually, but the whole book thing came about because my partner Robert, I met him, and he kept, as I said, write the story. So I started the story, and I can't believe that there's 4 decades in a little book of 162 pages. You know, that took 7 years to write. But really, I was still going through that inner. Well, I think we'll always go through the inner journey, but you know, it had been the start of it. And to go into a deeper level, I mean, you know, in that Carl Jung talks about the peeling of the onion, and I love that analogy because you think when you peel an onion, look at the tears that come. So it's like healing tears, you know, and the body. But then you can go deeper into the cells, and you realize how the body is holding on to traumas from years ago that you've not even realized, and how it caused pain. And so while you've been going through that journey, my body's actually been getting better as well. So even though society tells me I'm tramping towards 60, you're like, I don't feel like that. I have never felt this good, you know. And like with Robert's help, I started running because I'd always been trying to run.
So tell the viewers what age you started running at.
Oh, 49. I was 49 when I started running. But like I say, I never know when enough is enough. So in the first year, I did 9 half marathons. So I did 9 half marathons. I don't know how many 10Ks and 5Ks and that. So I've got to do a marathon. So at 52, I did my first marathon. And at 54, I did a triathlon.
But it shows you that kind of, so coming from what we've already heard in this very short space of time, from a broken body, broken mind, and obviously broken relationships, very much damaged, to somebody who's now laughing her head off as she's talking here and relating that your body's feeling better than it ever has. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating journey, and that's what I was saying about the book as well. I'm used to hearing people shares, and it's truncated into 20 minutes or usually, you know what I mean, at a meeting or something like that. But reading the book, you get a bit of depth to it, you get a bit more nuance, and it's fascinating. It's a fascinating journey, and it's one that started with meeting somebody who told you about the 12-step fellowship, which then led on to all these other things. And it's like, it just keeps, it reminds me of the Buddha tree, or the Bodhi tree. It's the kind of image that I get when I'm talking to you, because you're so full of energy and stuff as well. That's enough of me talking. You talk now.
I always feel like that too. I'm like, oh God, I'm sick of hearing myself. I need to be quiet.
But it's great. So listen, there's one thing that I almost ask everybody is the role of humour, because when we come in, often it's so dark and stuff. And even the subject matter that we're dealing with, which is like maybe childhood trauma, sexual trauma with some people, a whole range of different things. And yet, humour seems to run through our lives in a way that's quite healing, or quite. What has been your experience with fun and humour?
That's a really good question, because I can look back now, and when I first started writing the book, can I just say that I scrapped it a couple of times because I was still starting to write it from a place of anger. That's why it took so long. There was other stuff happening around me that had me in a place of deep anger, and I knew I couldn't write it from there. And I don't know if I got humour in the book, but I remember, you know that old adage, sticks and stones will break your bones and names will never harm you, right? So my mum told me that, which it came to be a silly saying for me, but I listened to that, and I thought, right, okay, so I picked people that just called me names, and it was okay to call me names, but it wasn't okay to call me names. So what I learned there was laugh at yourself before somebody else laughs at you. But I was just really highly sensitive to that. So it was all inside, like I said. And then humor, I love humor. I mean, well, you know Robert, right? That man makes me laugh every day, right? And that's what I loved about him. And the older I'm getting, the more I'm laughing at life. And I mean, I know, I mean, I'm not taking away from what's going on in the world just now and the pain and what people are going through. But if we can find that wee snippet of humour in amongst it all, it's so healing.
Yeah.
Laughing is so healing. And when I was doing my shamanic work, I felt terrible because we were doing breath work sessions, you know, and I'd start laughing. People were crying, they were spewing around me, they were sounding like they were choking to death, and I was like, I was holding it all in because I wanted to laugh. But the teacher said, you will release that in whatever way you need to release it. And she came along and she just put her hand on my leg, and I was off laughing, and I could not stop. My whole body was convulsing laughing, and it was the best thing I could do at the time. So, and I actually loved laughing. And I love crying too when I need to cry. It's just to allow myself all these things that humans do. Even to get pissed off and angry, it's okay. I'm certainly no perfect at keeping it all together. But I've got lots of tools and I've got the awareness of when and when not. That's the difference now.
So this journey is taught you what's good for you, what you need to do for your body and your mind and your spirit.
Yeah, and laughter's a big part of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, you know, and even if I am sometimes like Robert or something, and he has a habit of doing this thing, and it just melts me. I just crease. There's no way that I couldn't just start laughing in that moment. You know.
Your book's peppered or sprinkled with sayings. We talk about the you know, these kind of 12 steps of mutual aid support groups and stuff like that, and there really is some red hot kind of wee sayings that kind of it can deflate egos, or it can kind of make you laugh, and it can, and it's done with the best of intentions as well, isn't it? It's like, it's crazy, you know, the amount of wisdom that are in the rooms.
Yeah. It's a good place to be. I mean, whatever works. I mean, I've met people since then that sort of the stuff I've got in latterly, that's helped them recover.
Yeah.
They've not had to go. They haven't got the need to go to a 12-step program, or you know. So everybody has to find their own way, and that's what I like to do today. I like to guide people to find their own inner guru or their own inner guidance system that will lead them, or their own inner higher power, whatever, that will lead them to the right place.
There's a lot of people in the yoga world that I teach now, and I did, because we talked the other day, I did a session on yoga nidra tonight as well before we came, because I love yoga nidra as well, but I can't keep awake. But anyway, but a lot of people in the yoga world that have met teachers and people that they didn't go through any 12 steps or anything like that, but they found their way through that somatic kind of exercise stuff, and it gave them a framework to be able to recover to, and that's exactly what the 12-step stuff does as well. It gives you that framework, it gives you a support group, it gives you, you know, a program that you can which is extremely portable. You can take it anywhere with you.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's brilliant. So I was just going to look up that wee bit for your daughter. Can you remember where in the book?
I know. I think I remember where, but I don't know where it is about here. Which would be step. I think it was step 8.
I had it folded. I've got so many folds in the bloody book. Going back to it.
And because I'm looking for it here, maybe in step 9. Oh God.
Here it is. It's on page 103.
Oh, is it? Right, okay. Oh yeah, but I was on page 104. Oh yeah, there it was.
So you want to set it up just for the viewers so that they know where it's coming from.
Right, okay. So this was when I was going, finally, I mean, after 6 years of sitting, getting the brain fog to shift, and I started actually going through the steps, and I was attending conventions. It just was so lovely. You talk about the higher power and how it all just flowed into me going to conventions that fitted in with the place I was at. And this was a month that I had been away, and and I was into all these other people's books as well. It's funny how that, like I said, I think earlier, that how a lot of these books were written by people that had been in a 12-step program. So this was the step of God, what is it now? Well, it was step 7, but I was feeling it was more like 8 at the time. We humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings, and this was my youngest daughter, who was still living at home. The other 2 had sort of skedaddled at that time, and one was away travelling and one was going into the army. So she sent me this text message, and I saved it, and I wrote it down. I think I had been away at the weekend at a convention, and she was like, "Hey, I was just having a think. I just want to thank you for moving on with your life and meeting Angie to help you too. You've changed so much, and you have brought light to the house now." See, I still get emotional when I read that. Yeah. "The new you has made us a lot happier, even the dog." "Thanks, Mum. Keep your head up. Keep smiling. You're doing a great job, and I'm glad that you're so much happier, and I'm glad you found Alan on Love." And that was from my youngest daughter, who's now 29. She was, I don't know how many old she was then, but yeah. And I took her to Al-Anon actually, because there was no Alateen. The Alateen was for the kids, and it had disbanded in Scotland at the year I was in there. But she came to some meetings with me, and she was just amazing at these meetings.
Well, just on that point, how it is a family disorder.
Yeah.
And I was at a Portobello convention, which was an Edinburgh convention in the early days in my recovery, and the closest share I've ever heard to my own, and I must have been about 41 or something at this time, was a young woman for Alateen or adult children, one of the two, who was up sharing the stage and shared about her life in the home of an alcoholic, and the tears were just running down my face because I identified so much with that young woman's story. It was about her mum, but mine was about my dad, who was the alcoholic. But how everything revolved around that person, in terms of fear and pleading with my man not to react when my dad come home, or if he did, and all that stuff, and not want to bring your friends along to the house because you've no idea how it's going to be. All that kind of stuff, how everybody moved around like planets or moons around a planet and it was horrendous. But listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed our talk.
Thank you so much for asking me. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
This must be one of the best jobs I've had. So what I'll do is we'll finish up the now. If anybody was going through something, what would you give them any advice, or would you just, what would you say if somebody was watching this and they thought, I could never do all that, but I'm in real shit at the moment, or this is going on in my family? What any suggestions?
Oh yeah, I mean, if they I know what, well, I would understand how they would feel like that, definitely, yeah, because I've been there, and the thing is, I don't mind if people get in touch with me, John. Even if they just want to chat about something, I'm open for that. I have no problems with that, and they can get in touch with me through you, or I'm actually on Facebook as well. I've got a holistic health hub in Inverness is in there, and I've actually got soul wisdom journeys page on there as well. So if they want to get in touch with me, that's not a problem. For a chat, and because there's various places to go, not just the 12-step program, as I say, and I know quite a lot of routes they could go down if they wanted that, to go down a different route, or just a chat.
Okay.
just to chat, because that can alone, for somebody to hear you and to witness you and feel you, that's just an amazing place to be in. Yeah. Is that okay?
Listen, thank you so much, and we'll sign off just now. But I wanted to thank you, Lorna, so much for coming along and doing this. It's been a pleasure to listen to. So I'm just going to stop now.
Okay.